Hi everyone, I'm Donelle McAdams, and I'm going to show you today how to use my quick easy border mitering tool. So anytime you want to miter borders, whether it's just one border by itself or maybe you have two different borders, you want to miter that in the corner. This is the tool that's going to help you do that. And I want to show you how it's done, but I want to reassure you also that everything that I'm doing is pictured in very great detail in the leaflet that comes with the tool. It even gives you some measuring things that will allow you to know how long you need to cut your borders. So this is the tool itself. I first need to put my borders on. So I'm starting here with this simply a 12.5-inch square, and I'm going to put on a 4-inch border that is going to allow me to miter those corners. The same concept would work if you were doing a huge quilt, a king-size quilt. The border mitering works the same way. Now we also have a mini tool so that if you were doing real small things, and even like this size, you could use the mini. But I'm going to show you with the regular size tool today. So the first thing that I need to do is find the center of all 4 of my sides, which I've already done. And it doesn't matter whether this happens to be an actual square or if you were doing a quilt, it might be a rectangle. Maybe a different project would be a rectangle also. So I've got my 1/4-inch foot on my machine. I've set my stitch length to 2.0. So I'm going to have the smaller stitch length. And I'm going to work on adding the border on this side. Now, the easiest thing that I have found to do is to find the center, which I have marked right here, might be kind of hard for you to see, and line that up with the center of that side. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work from the center out because it's just easier. If you perfect it so that you can start at the other corner, that will be fine, but this works best for me. Now, when I lay this back, I can either measure this and put a little mark there, or I can simply just keep watching it in relationship to my foot. I think I'm going to get out my little tool here, and I am going to mark it so that it'll be easy for both me and you to see. And so I'm just going to mark that at 1/4 inch. So there's my 1/4 inch that way, and here's my 1/4 inch this way. And so I have got both of those marked because we need to stop stitching this border right in that spot. And when we're putting this one on, we'll need to stop in that very same spot so that we can miter it. So I'm going to go ahead and put a pin there so that I'll know and I'll have a warning, hey, you're coming up on that spot. So I'm just going to use my 1/4-inch foot. Again, I'm using a 2.0 stitch length, and I'm coming right to that spot, and I don't like to sew over pins. So I'm going to come right up to it. I'm going to take it out and sew that stitch. I'm going to peek under there and see, did I get it? And I may need to raise my foot up just a smidge to see. It looks like I've got one more stitch to go. So foot down and just tap and tap again, or you can use your auto up and down. And then I'm going to go ahead and set mine in reverse, and I am going to reverse that stitch just like I would on any seam. And you can see I got right up to that stitch. So now I'm simply going to cut that. Now the easiest way for me is then to just turn this around and come from the other end. So I'm going to go ahead and set that down. I'm going to line this up. I'm going to measure because this is a very exacting to get this perfect miter so that it doesn't bow out. And so there's my 1/4 inch. I'm going to stitch. And on this side, I don't even have to look under. I can see where I'm at. And I'm going to go needle down, back stitch, and then cut that thread. Now I'm going to do that same thing again, so I'll talk you through it on 2 more sides so that we can have 2 corners to actually show you the technique. So foot up, I've obviously got my center marked here. I'm going to take, oh, there we go, and lay this right on top, so I've got that center. Now you may be wondering, how did I know how long to make my borders? That's all in the instruction sheet that comes with the template, so you'll know how much extra you need to mark, or need to measure. Whoops, still set in reverse. Here we go. Now in this one, when I get down here, I don't have to measure as much because right there is where that is, because that's where I stopped before. So I'm going to pull this back. I'm going to slow down when I get down here because I don't want to overshoot it. Then I've got to get out my ripper, and I don't want to do that. So let's just put that pin there, just simply to hold where the spot is. One more, reverse, and we're going to cut that. And I'm going to flip it over. And lay this back out flat. And no, I'm not getting brave. I'm just waiting just a second to go ahead, put that right on that 1/4 of an inch. Come from the other direction. And if you have a fine line marker, that works the best. The reason I'm not using that is I wanted you to be able to see. And now I'm going to I didn't get my reverse touch. So let's just lift this up a smidge and go back. There we go. So now we're in the right place, and cut that thread. One more side. Obviously I have 2 more sides, but this will give me enough to show you this technique twice. And I'm going to line up here. Foot down. Needle down. I've got one side done here, so I can just simply put my little pin in line with that. Or I could mark it. Keep it right even with that edge. One more stitch. And reverse. Okay, so I've got ready for these corners. So what I'm going to do is I've got my iron right here, and I'm going to press these seams out away from the center. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set the seams. So I've moved over here to my little pressing station. And you can see that's just as it came off of the machine. And I'm going to do that on the 3 sides that I have already stitched. I didn't stitch the 4th one. And this one I didn't even stitch the whole long edge. So it's just going to be this half right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pull this out, and we're going to press that seam allowance to the border. And you can see everything is still open on the ends here. This is what we're going to be working with to do our miter. And before I leave the pressing station, I'm going to make sure that I've got it pressed on the outside and not have any kind of a wrinkle out there. So let's check that front. Got a thread here, I'll get that out. All right, so we're going to go back over to the other place so that I can show you how to mark this for cutting. So now what we're going to do is we're going to be using the tool, and some people reference this and call it a boot because it kind of looks like that. But to get ready to use it, we're working from the wrong side, and I have taken this border and flipped it back up underneath itself so it's totally out of the way. And this is the one we're going to work on first. And if you look at your template or your tool here, you can see seam and raw edge on both sides there. And I'm actually going to be flipping it over because that is the edge right here that I line up. So it's right on the seam, both ways, and right on the edge. And the purpose of these lines down here, now it's just a happenstance that this one is right in line with that, but the whole idea of having all of these lines is nothing more than to make sure you're parallel. Now I'm going to move it from here to show you. Sometimes it might look like that, but you just want to make sure you're not skewed in one direction or another. And the point of the boot is always to the end of your border. If you do it this way, you're going to be creating a line that's going to get cut off, and then you're not going to have enough to make your mitered corner. So we're going to take this again, line it up here with the edge here, and this edge here. This line needs to be right on that edge. This needs to be parallel. And what we're going to do is take a marker. I like a fine line, but you want to put pressure here so that your fabric doesn't move. I don't have a fine line today because I want you to be able to see it. And this is going to be our cutting line, and we want to know exactly where it needs to go. Now this is where I have to tell you, you have to trust the process. So what I'm doing is I'm lining this up and I'm going right back up there with that flattened out. And this looks odd, but that's what it's going to be to do the mitered corner. We're going to cut this in just a moment. So I'm going to flip this back out. This can either go on top or underneath. We'll put it underneath just to get it so it's out of our way. And then this time, because the boot or the point goes to the end, this is the end down here, I'm going to flip this over, line up that stitching line, line up that raw edge, make sure this is parallel. Now you see there it wasn't until I pull it. There it is, and so now it is down here also. Put weight on your ruler and draw right up against the edge there. Now when I had this cut, the ruler, I had it cut with a scant 1/4 inch because I knew that there was width to your marker. So you can, trust me, you can rest assured that it's going to be okay because of the way that was cut. Now I'm coming back up here just like I did on the other one, and I'm drawing that line. Now I'm going to do one whole corner and then I'll repeat the whole process. I like to wait until I'm ready to stitch it to cut it. And these scissors have a serrated edge, and it makes it very easy to cut right on that line because it grabs your fabric. Now when you get up to this point, put your hand underneath there so you make sure that you cut not only straight, but that you don't get the other piece on when you're cutting. So now I'm going to turn this way, And I'm going to come and again, that serrated edge just grabs right onto the fabric and it keeps you right on the line that you want your stitching. This is not a place to hurry or rush. And now I've got my pieces ready to stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this back and I'm going to get the points together down here. And I'm going to put a straight pin through there. And I don't want to stretch this at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start stitching about right here, clear up here, and then back stitch so that I don't get that caught down in my fabric. Now you may want to use a little starting block so that we don't have it pulling down in. So you can see I'm in reverse. I'm going very, very slowly. I'm going to stop right there and I'm going to take that pin out and I'm going to just use my finger to get that back. Don't stretch it and come forward now. So I'm going to start in about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch and I am going to reverse and go slowly in reverse till I get back to the edge because that's on the bias and we don't want it stretching. So go slowly and then you're going to come back forward and you're going to line this up. Don't stretch it. Always stop with the needle down. Now I'm going to take this piece and flip it back and I'm going to pull this back this way and you can see right there is where I'm going to come to. Let me point it out because that's where my stitching from joining my borders stops, starts, whatever you want to say. So I'm going to stitch right up to that pin. I'm not going to sew on it. And I'm going to then touch my reverse. Some of you may have to hold that reverse in. And I'm going to reverse about 8 stitches or so. And then you're going to look at it this way. This is going to get pressed like that. This is going to get pressed like this. So I'll do the pressing in just a moment, but I'm going to show you both sides and then we're going to do it again. So you can see that that gave us that nice mitered border with everything meeting right where it's supposed to and no little puckers and no swoops in it. So let's do one more side here. And we're going to go over here because I need to turn it. So we have this border flipped back up underneath there. We're going to repeat the process that we had a while ago. And that is to take the point to the wide end or the end that's going to get cut. Line up the stitching lines. Make sure this is parallel down here. If it's not, you're going to fix that before you actually draw. Put some weight right there to hold it in place so your fabric doesn't move. And then just use the straight edge part, turn that back, line this up, and we've got that ready to cut. So I'm going to flip that back. I'm going to lay this on the stitching line and the cut edge. Make sure we're parallel. Put some weight on that so your fabric doesn't move. And then just use some straight edge part of your template and line up down through at least 2 inches here and draw the remainder. So again, cut slowly. Make sure you don't have any fabric underneath there that's going to get cut. Put your hand underneath when you get close to that actual corner. We're going to flip this back. I'm going to be careful as you cut this. Get right on that line. And then get your points. Make sure you're not stretching any fabric here. And if you're going to do 2 borders, you might as well sew the borders together first and then put them on, so you only have to do all of this one time. So you can see I put that up there about 1.5 inches or so. I'm going to put that underneath. I've put it underneath the foot. I'm going to move it up. And I am going to stitch a couple stitches forward and then the rest in reverse to get back to the edge, keeping that nice 1/4 inch. Release that reverse. Some of you may be holding that button in. And then make sure you're not stretching that fabric. And then I'm going to line this up. And just like I did last time, I'm pulling this back flat this way, making sure I've got my edges even. And I'm going to stitch right up to where it joined and then back stitch. So once I've cut that, we're going to move to the iron and press this. So now I've positioned this on my ironing board or my pressing surface. And I'm going to press these back this way. They've already been pressed that way, so they know to go that way. And then I'm just going to take this and go one side or the other. It doesn't really matter. And then you'll simply press that flat over onto that side. So then when we flip this over, we're going to check it and make sure everything is like it should be. Press it from the front, so that we don't have any pleats or anything there. We'll do the same thing to this one. So I'm going to press here where it's already been pressed, and then one side or the other, and then simply come back this way and press across that corner. Now you'll notice there's like a stitch that's not in there. That's not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. I'm going to come to the other side and again, make sure everything is laying like it should be and give that a good press. So this is how the Quick Easy Miter Border Tool can help you to get a perfect miter in your borders with using the tool.